Okay, good evening. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Great, excellent. Welcome to Dodo Modern Poets. April Sayers. We've got a great lineup for you tonight on this rainy night in London. Later on we have Sue Johns, all the way from Cornwall, by Mitcham. Ted Smith Orr, all the way from Croydon, and Outpost of Civilization, lovely place though. Lisa Kelly, a North Londoner, so it could be a fight. And I'm from Folkestone, so I'm well out of it, almost in France, really. So later on we're going to have all those people reading, but I'm going to start the evening's proceedings with some of my latest works. So this first one is called Dark Chocolate. This is about eating chocolate in the cinema, and so see if you can guess which film I was watching when I was watching this film. That doesn't make sense, does it? See if you can guess which film I was watching when I was eating this chocolate. Dark chocolate. I like to sit in the dark and eat chocolate, munching away as a spaceship lands on Mars, cursing the amateurs, the toffee chewers, with their intrusively noisy wrappers. Don't they realise the hero's in danger? Through silent mouthfuls, I urge him on, safe in the knowledge my sweets do not melt in the hand. Eating chocolate in the dark allows you to be greedy without seeing the damning evidence. On screen the tension mounts. Can our man survive another mishap? Will the beautiful heroine arrive in time? I plan a rescue mission, a tube fashioned from the Malteser lid, firing chocolate bullets at the screen, but no need. Unlike real life, a happy ending will emerge. If not, there's another feature, same time next week. In Folkestone, when there's a storm at sea and you stand on the cliffs, it's just fantastic. You can really see the beauty of it. And when I was growing up, my mother used to really pretend... Hang on, I'm just going to go upstairs and tell them to keep the noise down a bit. The perils of a split-level venue. Anyway, storms. My mother used to pretend to be really scared of storms when we were children, so this is a storm warning. Respect for storms was an early lesson. My mother closed the curtains, made us hide under tables as thunder thundered, and lightning did something we were forbidden to see. It felt safe, camping out, scared witless in our parlour, praying Dad would get home, knowing he would scorn such fuss. I love the terror of the elements, crushing and banging, skies wild with escalating fury. Storms never lasted long enough for me. I wanted devilment, disaster, floods, the parting of waters, arks crowded with beasts, the end of the world. My mother said, "You can come up now." I put the tea on. Where was the fun in being alive after all, with school the next day? I longed for lightning to strike, not once, not twice, but forever, changing the whole world with light and drama, special effects to rival Hollywood. I was brought up a Catholic, and we went to a school called Thomas More, named after the saint, of course. And recently I came across a piece about Thomas More. He was, of course, before he died, he was held in the Tower of London in 1535 while awaiting execution by being hung, drawn and quartered. And all his papers and books had been taken away from him. So he wrote poetry on the side of his prison wall with a piece of coal. So this is More in Sorrow. Denied paper, the prisoner adapted to straitened circumstances, writing with coal, marking his final days on a prison wall. Resolute as befits a coming saint, dipping into principles set out by faith. In faith I bless you 1,000 times, he wrote, for lending me now some leisure to make rhymes. I first rhymed at a school named Thomas More. We had pens and paper, desks to hide behind. We sinners gave little thought to saints, martyred or otherwise, were too busy anticipating the next surprise, shuffled from a teenage deck of cards to spare a prayer for tortured bards. Now, to picture a prisoner versifying with coal seems profound. To hear the scratch of carbon on brick before committing to unyielding ground. Moore wrote less after losing his head, as poets do when newly dead, till comes the resurrection of their reputation. Schools named in honour, now there's completion. This is Refugee. Refugee is living in fear every second of every day. Refugee is seeing your children killed, terrified for the ones that live. Refugee is realizing that escape is a place with no name. Refugee is fleeing with just a suitcase and your loved ones. Refugee is losing all you own, your home, its memories. Refugee is giving your money to a gangster. Refugee is letting that gangster risk your life in a leaky boat. Refugee is the jubilation of survival as you scramble onto dry land. Refugee is the kindness of islanders offering shelter and warmth. Refugee is continuing your journey on a pitiless road. Refugee is bullet-faced men guarding razor wire fences. Refugee is watching a continent pull up its drawbridge. Refugee is freezing camps in winter, all dignity stripped away. Refugee is wicked politicians peddling a currency of hate. Refugee is the miracle of completing the obstacle course. Refugee is being lifted by strong hands, words soothing as balm. Welcome, friend, come share our land.
Yeah.
One bit surprised you to learn that as I was brought up Catholic, my parents were Irish and we spent a lot of time in Ireland as children, and this is about staying at my grandmother's house in Tubbercurry in the west of Ireland, in Sligo, and going out to collect breakfast in the morning. So it's picking mushrooms in Tubbercurry. Rain sparkling in hedgerows, we fetched a bucket to the field, began picking dew-fresh gold, luscious fungi, free as the western air, teasing my grandmother's house. The Atlantic girlishly tossing her white caps as we returned, ripe with treasure. Stoked the fire with peat, placed a brimming pan on the hob, mushrooms wallowing in a scoop of dripping. Breakfast was served with soda bread, butter melting into pale streams. My uncle ate from the frying pan, smoked for a while, then took his keen-edged spade down to the turf. A life lived without telephone or television, radio or papers, only gossip for news, content in its natural rhythms, ceilidh, church-going, hymns. That's just exactly the life I live now. As the poets who are performing tonight know, I communicate with them by pigeon. So some of them may not have arrived, but the pigeons have all come home. You probably heard of the Palestinian poet Ashraf Fayyad. He was sentenced to death in Saudi Arabia, and they accused him of questioning religion and spreading atheist thought with his poems. He says, of course, that his poems are about being a Palestinian refugee and cultural and philosophical issues. Anyway, after a worldwide campaign, Ashraff's sentence has been commuted to imprisonment, but he still needs your support. So Amnesty, I think, will show you how to get in touch with him. This poem I'm going to read I wrote more than 30 years ago, and it's about a poet called Benjamin Aloisi, who was hanged by the apartheid government in South Africa for saying the right thing at the wrong time. And I'm reading this poem tonight, regretfully really, because we should no longer need poems like this one, but we do. So this is When You Hang a Poet. When you hang a poet, you have not shut his mouth. When you strip his dancing body from the gallows, you have not shut his mouth. When your thieves of the light set his laughing corpse on fire, you have not shut his mouth. When weighted with your guilt, you sink his singing ashes to the ocean floor, you have not shut his mouth. You have opened a door, you have awoken every poet who will in turn awake 1,000 more. Shelley's unacknowledged legislators of the world, for Africa's sake, demand that this be heard. When you hang a poet, you have not shut his mouth. Listen, he is speaking to you now. You have opened a door through which one day freedom will walk. Okay, we move on.